I feel like every time a new map comes out, I'm almost duty bound to take a look at it at least a couple of times, see what the different metas are, see what people can pull off, see what different strategies are available. Today, we're going to be taking another look at Glacial Gap version 1.1. I really think there's some potential here. This northern lane, we didn't see very much capitalization on the last look we took. There was a couple of termites that tried to sneak their way through, and eventually Karganeth walked along as well. I'd love to see some really cheeky play. A noteworthy comment that I got on the other video pointed out that you could bring some radar jammers in planes as well. Hide them around on the northern section there, and that might work pretty good to mask the presence of your units creepy crawling their way across the other side of the map here. Either way, representing the blue team and spawning over here on the eastern side, it's going to be Dr. Kronos. Kronos going into a double solar 2 windmill start here. It's pretty expensive for the early game, but I guess it's a little bit offset by the fact that you get 4 metal extractors. I mean, the amount of metal you get in total here is 8, which is good enough for an early game economy, certainly enough for vehicles here. You don't have to be super greedy about your expansion with the commander. It does mean, however, that you have to put down 200 metal and what would that be? 2,000 energy? Yeah, 500 energy apiece, so 2,000 energy just to get all of your metal extractors up and running. It's not a tremendous amount, but in the early game, coming by that energy can be a little bit difficult. So I guess I don't mind the two solars as well as the 2 windmills here rather than either or. You're going to start hitting an E-stall pretty badly if you don't go into something like that. Pumping a couple of rascals out already, I really like to see it. Of course, getting that scouting information out is important. Knowing if your opponent is going to be going for anything cheeky over here. When you go for vehicles, you don't have the opportunity to reclaim a lot of these rocks around the map, right? You don't have the super quick res bots like these bad boys, the grave robbers here, that are way better at getting out there and eating up the juicy, lucrative reward out upon the map. Now, representing the red team, spawning all the way on the western side in the water, freezing as it must be, it's going to be Alexius. Alexius. We'll go with Alexius. Going to be our red team leader here, spawning as Armada and in the seas, already with the submarine out on the, well, not quite the seabed, but in between the, well, I guess it is on the seabed, huh? Anyways, oh, not quite. It hovers. It lingers and hovers. Anyways, distractions aside, submarine is already out on the map, and this is a really important unit. So getting the submarine out is pretty risky here for Alexius, but it is powerful. The submarine is the only thing that you have early on into the game that can actually do any damage across the map. For 440 metal, 3,100 energy, you can put out a submarine, and what you can do with it is go harass the economy across the map here. Now it looks like Sanyos, the opponent here for the, or opposing the red team in purple here, also pumping out a submarine and looking to do a little bit of damage. So it's going to come down to who has a little bit of better submarine control in the early game. If you can manage to shut down your opponent's early game metal production, especially on Navy, but also in vehicles as well, you can really critically hinder them. Oh, this is nice. So Dr. Kronos has transported the commander all the way forward here. All the rocks have been eaten up already by grave robbers, but that's fine. The rocks here are not going to be nearly as much as this many metal extractors going back to the blue commander here, who's now dropped his commander on the front lines and is going to keep on marching. Gotta be real careful about this. Oh, okay, interesting. Looks like Xeno Dragon has done the same thing. So the blue team setting themselves up for a very, very far forward front line. There's a little bit of a tongue twister for you. Say that 10 times fast. Far forward front line, huh? Incisors getting mixed up with some grunts. Pretty much perfect engagement right here for Dr. Kronos, though. Gonna take the grunts back into the firing range of the commander, as well as now this LLT here. And all of that is going to be well and good for keeping this front line safe. Still a little bit of a pathway open on the southern side. I wonder if we'll see a little bit of aggression through there. But other than that, this is looking very rock solid for the blue player. It's not an advantage yet, though. It's not an advantage until these metal extractors get claimed. Once these are up and running and pumping out juicy metal back to the blue team's, or rather the blue player's economy, then it's going to be a tremendous advantage. But until then, it's going to really come down to how fast these constructors can push forward and claim all these metal extractors. You can see right now 12 metal per second coming in to the blue player's economy. He desperately needs to get more and more metal extractors up and running right now. He does have a constructor moving forward and building them, but it does take a little while. Yeah, I think maybe going for 2 constructors might have been the move here. Maybe send one of them forward and keep the other one claiming these 8 right here, and then have the other one claim all this. I'm not sure exactly, but I do love the aggression. I think this is absolutely the right play here. Now the red team is going to be behind significantly, 8 metal per second, more or less, out of the red player's grasp. For the time being, though, you can see Soldier Andrew Grieve, way more units on the front. So you have an early pacing tempo, or an early tempo lead when you're the red player here, or when you're the bot player here, because you can pump out those units for so much cheaper. And also, you can expand a whole lot quicker, right? You can get your constructors out cheaper as well, means you can get your units up and running. Gonna go for a little build power on the front line. This is a strategy that's been popping up recently, and I quite like it. Slap down a construction turret. Doesn't take too much to build when you're just having a single constructor on it. 3 metal per second, 48 energy. It's kind of expensive, but it's not devastating. It's not gonna cripple your army, and it's not gonna shut your production down entirely. I quite like it. It allows your units to pull back and heal themselves up. You can also duck your units into combat like this, and then when they're injured, rather than having to micro res bots patching them up, instead you can just go ahead and send them back to within range of this turret, and all will be well. It's a expense to minimize APM, and I think that's all the well worth it. Chronos in a little trouble here, actually. 53% on that commander. He's taking quite a few hits from a lot of these aggravators here. Yeah, those aggravators want to get engaged as soon as possible. There's definitely enough of them to start harassing this army, and indeed, they're going to blast away at a whole lot of these vehicles here. If the aggravators manage to do enough damage here, I think they could probably push Chronos off this line, and it's going to destabilize the blue commander completely here. A bunch of goons from a hovercraft lab have been pumped out and are now jumping on top of the reinforcements, picking them off one by one. That's quite nice. Oh, they're going back to the water. Oh, no, no, no. I think you got to commit to the push here. If they could shut down this constructor, that would be tremendous. Yeah, oh, we're close. Nope, we're gonna avoid the... Oh, no, we're going back. There is enough of them to snipe this constructor here, and eventually, I do believe they're gonna get it. Very nicely done. So with that constructor down, that now means that, yeah, no more expansion for the blue player. Holding this front line essentially is not netting Dr. Chronos any advantage at this point, because none of these metal extractors have been claimed, the back line has been ravaged. This is looking worse and worse right now for the blue player. Now the northern side is looking phenomenal. Xenodragon is doing a great job of keeping the production on top of it. Up in the front line here, we also have all the metal extractors claimed. Now there's not this big array of metal extractors, so it's not as pressing, but there's certainly a few of them that had to be captured here. Going for a little bit of build power, that's nice. Going to be supported by Bar Star D gun. Bar Starred gun. We'll go with Bar Star D gun. Nice aggression down south here as well. Submarines. At least the ones from the beginning of the game. I think a couple of submarines right here. Pumped out at the very start of the match. Going to be, yeah, making their way across and still doing some damage over here. Getting a tremendous amount of value out. Oh, well, when they don't miss. Yeah, there you go. Popping all of those dolphins for free, basically. Well, it's better than free. It's completely, infinitely efficient. Sanyos in a lot of trouble here, too. Yeah, those commanders, they're especially prone to torpedoes. It takes, well, 10 shots, but the commander regens a little, so it's closer to 11. You can see how quickly they burst down a commander. Just a couple of hits. Oh, yeah, Sanyos in a lot of trouble here. He's going to have to micro his heart out to try and save this commander from these 2 submarines. Very minimal cost to try and snipe a submarine, or to try and snipe a commander right there. I think Sanyos is going to be driven back, though. More so, the destroyers are going to reinforce here. I think it's going to be quite good. Trying to protect the Allies commander. Well done by Lord James to be aware of that, cognizant of it. Always tricky, keeping your teammates in mind. Very powerful, though. Backline here. Looks like Pam St. Clement, or Pam St. Clement, just going for a whole bunch of T1, basically. We've got loads of maces, loads of rocketeers, loads of basically everything. Walking its way across the map onto the front lines here. We do have a big old engagement up north. Janus is connecting right now. They're a little far forward, but I mean, they're not taking too many hits because they're moving, and those aggravators aren't exactly the pinnacle of tracking technology. Well, one of the Januses goes down. Whistlers as well, firing away whenever they can, shredding off percentages of the health, slowly but surely. Mr. Dyrac's force has crumbled, though. This is such a disheartening part of the match. When you're playing as the bot player and you're going up to this part in the match, this can feel really, really painful, where there's not really much you can do in the way of shutting down these vehicles. They've already snowballed to the point that they can overwhelm you. Your commander is really the only thing that can kind of stand up to those. Oh, and those Janus hits really turn you off from pushing into there. Down indeed does go Mr. Dyrac's commander, leaving not but a couple of aggravators here in the hills to try and hold the line. Can vehicles push through this hill, I wonder? I'm not sure. It almost seems like the answer is no, but even so, it's not the end of the world if they can't, because obviously they can just sweep down south here like they're doing. Gonna all assist the push here on the southern side. This is 4 players worth of aggression. 1, 2, 3, and 4 players all applying pressure right onto Andrew Greaves' central command center. Now, he does have a whole bunch of these agitators. That's quite funny. We don't usually see more than one of these. In this case, we've got 2. And they're firing away. I mean, if there was ever a unit group that they would be halfway decent against, I think it would be a lot of T1 bots. You can see they do a decent amount of damage and splash damage, but they just fire so slowly. You know what? These agitators have done a damn good job holding this line. To their credit, they've done a damn good job holding this line. Not going to matter, though, as the shell shockers eventually burst them down. That waterfall of firepower. Not much can stand up to, what is that, a grand total of 18 shell shockers firing away. Yeah, that's a lot of damage per second, every single second. Construction turret here needs to start eating this wreckage. Yeah, we need to make the best of a bad situation. Just eat up this wreckage. I think if you eat everything up here, you probably could go for T2. Make a desperate T2 push right now as the maroon player. Oh, what on earth? Looks like Xenodragon is being a greedy boy here, trying to eat up the commander wreckage with a commander wreckage, and or with a commander turned wreckage. And now you can see those hounds are leaking out of the backline here for the yellow player, and they're going to start helping clean up a lot of this T1 mess on the front line here. It's going to be enough, though. That's a lot of medium tanks, and they're pretty beefy. Hounds do a decent job against them, but they're not perfect. No unit is perfect. Okay. Wreckage was eaten up here by a maroon player, Andrew Greaves, so that's quite nice. At the very least, going to try and recuperate some losses from that. Tons of aggravators out now. Oh, I'm just not sure if the aggravators are the right move here. Yeah, there's tons of metal in the bank right now. I think a T2 transition would be well to do. You can always eat up your own units, right? I mean, we got 1.5 thousand metal in T1 units right now. It always seems weird to pull apart your own army, but if you eat up your own units, especially the injured ones, right? You can just pick off the ones that have very low health and eat those ones up. You're still going to get the full metal refund, but it's not going to take nearly as long. And then you can start going into a T2 lab. I think I'd desperately like to see it right here for our maroon player. How's energy looking? Yeah, we got about 500 energy. That's also where you more or less want to sit if you're looking for some sort of a T2 transition here. Hound's going to start getting to work over here. I think these hounds should probably switch to their Gauss mode, just for the fact that it fires a little bit quicker. A little less prone to overkill when they're in the Gauss mode. They would have saved maybe 20 seconds cleaning all this up, as opposed to, or maybe 20 seconds is even too much. Maybe 10 seconds cleaning all that up, which isn't a tremendous amount, right? But every little bit helps, especially when you're this far behind. You're the entire front line here pushed super, super far forward. Got a T2 forward lab here for Barstar. Commander goes down on the front line. That's another commander kill for those hounds. Yeah, they're putting in some good work here. Nicely done by the yellow player, getting some sort of unit on the front line that can help. Now transitioning into T2 tech. Wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being passed around here. Looks like one of them was used to upgrade mexes and then handed off to an ally. That's a really nice move. Upgrading your own mexes and then eventually handing off that unit when it becomes more convenient for somebody else to wield it. I like it quite a bit. This is a lot of submarines we got under the water here. If those submarines focus the destroyers, they certainly could kill them. Certainly. You know what? There was a lot more destroyers there than I thought. That's actually all destroyers. I thought there was a couple of frigates mixed in there. I was absolutely wrong. No, that composition of destroyers just wrecked those submarines under the water there. Very nicely done by Lord James. Good gauge of the, well, the engagement right there. That was nicely done. Destroyers, of course, have a tremendously long range, so I'd love to see them trying to poke away at this composition. It takes a lot of APM to constantly be microing them back. Essentially, you want your Navy to kind of zigzag up in this direction, and then turn around and zigzag back down in this direction. That's kind of how you want to dip your Navy in and out. It's a fine line between moving them so much that they can't fire because they're reacquiring with their gun, and keeping them moving so that they don't get hit by enemy guns. These hounds need to get so much more work done in order to push this line back right now. I don't think they're going to be able to handle these Mauser that are coming up on the northern side. Once those Mauser hit critical mass, there's really not a lot you can do with bots in order to shut them down. The sharpshooters are an excellent option just because they can fire away from such far range. But other than that, you have to think about doing something cheeky like a spy bot play, or going for something like sprinters maybe that could jump on top of them before they actually get a chance to fire. You have to really start working around the Mauser rather than directly addressing them. Sharpshooter obviously very, very expensive. We do see a couple of them being pumped out here by the yellow players, streaming them out to the front line. I showed you how to do it. You got to keep them in your base, and you got to build them up to significant numbers. Now, you don't have to keep them directly in your base. Maybe putting them up on this hill or putting them down here somewhere wouldn't be the end of the world, but you definitely don't want to send them into combat until they've spiraled, which is oftentimes tricky to gauge, right? It's tricky to determine when you've hit that number, but certainly against T1, it's not going to be too many. 5, 6, 7 should be more than enough. Sheldon here trying their very best to contest these Mauser. Oh, the Mauser just do so much splash damage. Yeah. The Maces can't, or sorry, not the Maces. The Sheldon rather can't push in very far for fear of completely getting obliterated by those long-range T2 vehicle artillery pieces. I was hoping to see some Quakers. Looks like we do have a T2 factory coming up. We also have the auxiliary units, the candidate units enabled this time. The Quaker got a bit of a tune, just to give you a little bit of an insight as to what that looks like. Basically, they slowed down its fire rate, but turned up its everything else. It's got way more AOE. It packs a way bigger punch. It's much more like a strategic bombardment tool than it is just a kind of knockoff Mauser. Very, very good, and extremely powerful on the front line. It's very punchy, and it can certainly melt through a whole lot of thick armor plating. It's very good for shutting down bulls. I think it does a little bit of impulse now too as well, so it can kind of stun units that it hits because it hits hard enough. Pretty good unit. Yellow player has decided to go into an APHIS here. We're almost done with it. Almost, very close. 23 seconds out from finishing the APHIS. It's a bit of a greedy play, but if he can manage to get it up and running here, Saab can manage to get it up and running, then it could certainly be a nice little eco spike right now. The blue team does not have anything like that, any proper T2 economy. They all have advanced metal extractors, or are at the very least planning on upgrading their metal extractors. A lot of this T2 transition happened backwards, so we see a T2 on the front line and nothing in the back line, which is a little odd, opposed to usual, but not the end of the world. The more Mauser build up here, the more a spy bot really is starting to make sense. 1 or 2 spy bots connecting with this entire group of Mauser right now, and you can imagine how devastating it would be to march in just a whole bunch of fiends after the fact to clean up that whole contingency of Mauser here. If we just select the Mauser, it's 5,000 metal that could go right down the drain if you just sent in a couple of those EMP bad boys. Sharpshooter starting to step forward. So important that we see these being saved here, being used sparingly. You really desperately do not want your sharpshooters to be missing their shots here. So far, so good. 4 solid connections. The longer that goes on, the more value you can get. Sharpshooter is one of those units that you can get absolutely ridiculous, stupid value with, just because of the fact that they can do so much damage and retreat, cloak themselves, disappear into the night. Very powerful unit. The naval engagement has been won here by the green player who shut down completely the naval lab of Ryoku, going to be retreating with his own buccaneers, trying to clean up this mess of an army headed over from the tan player. A lot of it getting, oh no, getting stuck on the iceberg. That's a bit of a weird one. Lord James doing an excellent job of keeping this entire navy for the tan player. Oh, well done. I was gonna say keeping it right out of range of the frigates here and well within range of his own destroyers. Commander goes down right in the middle of that tan composition, blowing the entire navy out of the water. That was a beautiful play right here, and now Lord James has thoroughly secured the naval victory right now. That was devastating. We managed to reclaim all this. It's gonna be huge. Sanyo's immediately sending some res subs here to try and resurrect this commander. I think we need to worry more about reclaiming all this metal that went down right here, but certainly getting that commander back up and running. I mean, it is another nuclear bomb you have at your disposal, right? While we have this, 3, 2, T1 factors. A little bit of coaching perhaps happening here. Tiger tanks now out. for Dr. Kronos. And they're pretty beefy boys. Very good for breaking front lines like this. Spybot finally hits the front, but it is revealed by walking headfirst into a tank. Gets its head blown off. And that is going to be the end of the very valiant hold over here. Don't see those sharpshooters anymore. I'm going to guess that they got overran and demolished here. Let's see if we can find a sharpshooter debris. There it is. I knew that scrap of metal looked roughly like a sharpshooter. Just had a sixth sense. There goes that Quaker shot. Let's see it in action. Firing away. Take a look at the AoE on these bad boys. Absolutely massive. Huge AoE impact on that. Perfect for shredding apart T1 compositions, but also great for blasting apart any rows of artillery, right? Any rows of Sheldon or anything like that tend to group up any of those units. Very, very good stuff. Be careful about that friendly fire, too. One thing Cortex players are always aware of, just how much their own artillery hurts. Nothing quite like getting shot in your own foot by your own gun. Couple of fat boys out now, trying to hold the northern front. Welders pulled to the southern side. Nope, actually they're going to help the fat boys up north here. Hounds are going to be pulled to try and deal with the southern side. Hover tanks here, that's a bit of an interesting choice. I don't hate it. Those halberds are actually incredibly powerful. They're a bit of a sneaky, powerful unit. They're not often seen. I feel like we don't see them very often, but they can do a lot of work. They are really, really good. They're like a baby version of the Sumo. Pretty much, I mean, yeah, pretty much an equivalent to the Sumo, just out of a T1 amphibious lab, right? Instead of out of the very, very expensive T2 lab. Hovercraft lab, pardon me, not the amphibious lab. We'll see if he can save Andrew Grieve here. He's trying to move his commander forward. Looks like he's thinking about trying to get a D-gun. Doesn't really have the power for it right now. A lot of his windmills went down. Oh, was that the last commander? Oh no, it was just a well-timed resign vote. I was like, what on earth? I didn't think that was the very last commander, but it looks like the red team decides to resign right there. I guess that northern front crumbling slowly but surely just meant that they didn't think they could hold on. This naval side being won by that excellent commander explosion as well certainly didn't help, and indeed it's going to be the blue team who seizes a victory in today's match. What an awesome one. Sure hope you enjoyed today's match. You can always show your appreciation by leaving a like down below, hitting that subscribe button, joining the Brightworks. I do one of these daily casts every single day. If that's something you're interested in, then feel free to tune in and come along for the ride. Other than that, though, I will see you in the very next one. I hope you have a great rest of your day.